What happens when the man who built the company from scratch realizes he might not even recognize it anymore? Nathaniel Warner stared at the grainy security footage on his laptop, lips tight. He was in his office at headquarters, 6 floors up, early morning. There were 7 outdoor challenge course centers under his brand now: ropes, rock walls, team building weekends. But lately, customer reviews from the Oak Ridge location had dipped. Not bad enough to cause panic, but enough to make him curious. Words like push too far, unsafe, and aggressive trainer popped up more than once. He didn't want to rely on filtered reports anymore. He built this business from scratch, starting with a single wooden climbing tower in his backyard 20 years ago. Now his name wasn't even on the signage. That was on purpose. The brand had grown too big, too corporate. Most of the newer employees didn't even know what he looked like. "I need to feel it again," he muttered, shutting the laptop. He shaved his beard clean, dyed his hair a darker brown, and swapped his usual jeans and flannel for cargo pants and a faded green hoodie. His assistant helped him craft a fake resume under the name Nick Wallace, a former warehouse worker looking for a change of pace. No one at Oak Ridge had ever met him. He'd never been down there personally. The district manager, Calvin, handled that region. Nathaniel figured it was time to see if Calvin had been paying attention. He applied through the trainee program. 3 days later, he got an email confirmation and a start date. Monday morning, Nathaniel arrived at the Oak Ridge course. It was just past 7, fog still clinging to the trees. The place looked decent: ropes freshly coiled, gear hung neatly. He stepped into the trailer office where new hires checked in. A young woman with sunburned cheeks and a firm handshake greeted him. "You must be Nick. I'm Morgan Callahan, lead trainer." Morgan was maybe in her late 20s, bright eyes, quick smile. "We've got a group of high schoolers coming in this morning. You'll shadow Darren. He's handling the vertical climb and team bridge today." Darren was already outside, adjusting harnesses. He was tall, built like a linebacker, and barely acknowledged Nathaniel when Morgan introduced them. "New guy, huh?" Darren said, not looking at him. "Try not to get in the way." Nathaniel stayed quiet. He wasn't here to win friends. By mid-morning, the school bus pulled in. About 20 teens piled out, all wearing matching shirts. They looked excited. Nervous, too. A teacher handed Morgan a clipboard. Nathaniel noticed right away how Morgan handled the intro. She was clear, encouraging, and calm. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with," she told the students. "We're here to support you." Darren, however, had a different tone. Once the group reached the vertical climb, Darren took over. "All right, no backing out once you're clipped in," Darren barked. "This isn't a playground. You climb, or you don't belong up here." A boy near the back, thin with glasses, raised a hand hesitantly. "What if I don't want to go all the way?" Darren laughed. "Then you're wasting everyone's time. You think the rest of the world's gonna wait for you to feel ready?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. The boy lowered his hand. Silence fell. No one said anything. Morgan stepped toward Darren. "Hey, maybe let's ease them in." Darren cut her off. "They signed up for the full course. We're not doing half measures." Nathaniel said nothing, but his stomach turned. He helped a few kids with harnesses, staying close. When one girl froze halfway up the wall, Darren shouted from below, "You either move up or I send someone else." Nathaniel stepped in fast. "She's clipped in. Let her breathe." Darren glared at him. "You got something to say, rookie?" Nathaniel met his eyes. "I've seen kids freeze before." "Yelling doesn't help." Darren scoffed and walked off. Later, during lunch, Nathaniel caught Morgan alone near the water station. "Is he always like that?" he asked. She gave a tired look. "He's been here 5 years. Calvin loves him. Says he keeps the numbers up." Nathaniel frowned. "Numbers? Completion rates? Bookings? Repeat schools? Darren pushes and the kids finish. Doesn't matter how?" Nathaniel stared out at the course. A boy was sitting alone near the edge, rubbing his elbow. "That kid okay?" Morgan sighed. "Fell during the team bridge. Said he was dizzy." Darren made him finish it anyway. Nathaniel felt something twist in his chest. This wasn't the company he built. That night, he returned to his motel and wrote everything down. Names, moments, tone. He watched the footage on his GoPro hidden in his vest. Darren yelling. The girl freezing. The boy limping. He looked at himself in the mirror, beard gone, eyes tired. What happened to us? He whispered. By Thursday morning, Nathaniel had learned the routine. Darren dominated the high-risk sections of the course while Morgan rotated between lower elements and logistics. He kept his questions minimal, his presence low-key, but every hour spent on site made it harder to stay silent. The students that day were from a local charter school. Smaller group, about a dozen kids and older juniors and seniors. The mood was different. Less excitement, more quiet calculation. A few of them looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. As Nathaniel helped prep helmets, he overheard two boys whispering near the equipment shed. Don't let that guy catch you hesitating, one said. He made my cousin redo the tower 3 times. Nathaniel kept his hands steady, nodding slightly to himself. Another data point. Pattern forming, not an isolated moment. Morgan handed him a clipboard. You're with me on the low ropes today. Darren's handling the ridge course. He glanced at the routine. Are we still short on staff? Always, she muttered. Calvin keeps saying they'll send more seasonal hires. They don't come. They walked toward the low ropes, navigating the uneven terrain. Morgan's limp, which she tried to mask, had worsened. She winced when she stepped on a root. Did you twist something? Nathaniel asked. 2 weeks ago. I reported it. Calvin said there was no one to cover my shifts. Nathaniel didn't respond. He just crouched and adjusted the ropes, listening. An hour later, a sharp whistle cut through the trees. One of the teachers from the visiting school jogged up to Morgan, face tight. We've got a situation up on the ridge. One of our students passed out. Morgan turned. What? Darren said he's faking it. But the kid's still on the platform. Hasn't moved. Morgan looked at Nathaniel. I need to get up there. He didn't hesitate. I'm coming with you. They reached the ridge course in under 5 minutes. A boy probably 17 was slumped against the support pole at the far edge. His harness was still clipped in, but his arms dangled uselessly at his sides. Darren stood nearby, arms crossed. He's been sitting there 5 minutes, Darren called out. I told him to push through. He's just being dramatic. Morgan went straight for the student, unclipping him with practiced hands. Nathaniel saw the boy's face up close, pale, lips tinged with blue. He's not faking anything, she snapped. Nathaniel grabbed the radio from Darren's belt without asking. We need a medic to the ridge. Now. Darren reached for it. You don't have clearance to. Nathaniel didn't hand it back. Then report me. Darren's jaw worked, but he said nothing. The medic arrived within minutes. The boy, whose name was Theo, had a pre-existing condition, vasovagal syncope, and had informed the staff during check-in. The form had been marked, but Darren had either not read it or ignored it. As Theo was taken down by stretcher, the teacher from his school glared at Darren. We gave you his medical history in writing. Darren shrugged. Kids lie all the time. Morgan turned on him. Are you serious right now? Nathaniel stayed quiet, watching. The moment wasn't right yet. But it was close. That evening at the motel, he made a call to his executive assistant. No more waiting, he said. I'm going in tomorrow. Arrange a full staff meeting at Oak Ridge for end of day. No leaks. When he arrived Friday morning, still dressed as Nick Wallace, he found Morgan stacking helmets into crates. Her limp had worsened again. Why are you even here today? He asked. She gave a thin laugh. I've got no PTO left. Calvin doesn't count medical days as separate. Nathaniel's face hardened. And Darren? He's up on the wall. Same as always. Nathaniel nodded. You'll want to cancel your evening plans. She looked up, frowning. Why's that? You'll see. By 5 o'clock, all staff were called into the main trailer. A few looked confused. Darren leaned against the wall with his arms folded, clearly annoyed. Morgan sat near the back, watching Nathaniel. He stood near the whiteboard, still in his work clothes. He took off the ball cap. Some of you know me as Nick, he said. But my real name is Nathaniel Warner. I'm the founder and CEO of this company. The silence hit like a dropped ladder. A few mouths opened. Darren straightened slightly, but didn't speak. I went undercover this week because I've been getting reports that didn't match the values this company was built on. What I saw confirmed those concerns. He looked at Morgan. We have employees working through injuries without support. We have a site running understaffed with no plan to fix it. And we have a trainer putting guests in danger, ignoring medical alerts, and creating a culture of fear. He turned to Darren. You're done here. Effective immediately. Darren scoffed. You can't be serious. I've got the highest throughput numbers in the region. I don't care about throughput, Nathaniel said. You put a student with a medical condition in danger and dismissed it as drama. You ignored signed disclosures. You ridiculed minors in front of their peers. You're not just a bad fit, you're a liability. Darren's face flushed. He opened his mouth again, but Nathaniel raised a hand. You're not required to speak. You're required to leave. He motioned to the assistant site manager, who escorted Darren out, still fuming. Nathaniel addressed the room again. None of this should have gone unchecked. That's on me. I let the layers between headquarters and the field get too thick. That ends now. He looked to Morgan. You should have had backup when you got injured. You should have had authority to override decisions that put people at risk. Starting next week, you're promoted to site lead. You'll help me rebuild this location from the ground up. Her lips parted slightly, stunned. I don't know what to say. Say you'll tell me when something's broken, he said. And expect me to actually listen. She nodded slowly. He turned back to the others. Every one of you deserves a workplace where safety, respect, and support aren't optional. You'll get new hires within 2 weeks. We'll rotate in extra staff from nearby sites if we have to. But no more running short. A younger trainer raised his hand. Will you be sticking around? Nathaniel smiled faintly. I'll be back here once a month. Not in a suit. Not with press. Just me. Same gear as you. If I ever stop showing up, you tell Morgan. He stepped back, letting the weight of the moment settle. The meeting ended quietly. No applause. No speeches. Just people lingering in the doorway, processing what had just happened. Later, as he walked the length of the course one last time before leaving, Nathaniel passed the ridge platform where Theo had collapsed. The gear was untouched, the lines still taut in the wind. He bent down, tightened a carabiner, and stood in silence. There was a long way to go, but the hard part, facing the truth, was finally done. The Monday after the staff meeting, Nathaniel returned to Oak Ridge in a corporate SUV with no logo. He parked behind the maintenance shed, out of sight, and stepped out wearing a windbreaker and hiking boots. No disguise this time, no cap or alias. The air was cooler than the week before, and the course sat quiet in the early morning, dew still clinging to the ropes. Inside the trailer, Morgan was already reviewing the day's schedule. Her knee was wrapped snugly, and a pair of crutches leaned against the far wall. She glanced up with a look that wasn't quite surprise. You didn't have to come back already. Nathaniel nodded. I know. I wanted to. She didn't argue. Instead, she handed him a laminated map of the course. 3 groups today, 2 middle schools and a corporate team in the afternoon. We're stretched thin again. Calvin hasn't sent the backup staff yet. I've got 1 trainee who's still green and 1 guy from the sister site who just showed up this morning. Nathaniel took the map and scanned the zones. Where do you need me? She pointed to the blind bridge. That's the one Darren used to run. We haven't had anyone consistent on it since he left. It's a trust-heavy section. You good with that? I built that bridge myself, he said. I can handle it. By mid-morning, the first school group arrived. Nathaniel kept his focus tight. The blind bridge was a suspended wooden path strung between 2 tall platforms designed so participants had to wear blackout goggles and rely on verbal directions from their teammates. It was meant to teach trust and communication. He watched carefully as the kids took turns. 1 girl froze halfway, gripping the ropes so hard her knuckles went white. Her teammates shouted instructions from the ground, but they spoke over each other, confusing her. Nathaniel stepped closer, keeping his voice even. "One voice at a time," he said. "Pick someone to guide her. The rest of you stay quiet." A boy with a calm tone stepped forward. "Left foot forward. That's it. Now shift your weight." The girl made it across. When she pulled off the goggles, she was shaking but smiling. Nathaniel made a note. That boy had potential, clear communicator, steady under pressure. As the second group arrived, he noticed a new trainer helping with harness fittings near the gear shed. Broad-shouldered, early 20s, wearing a navy fleece. He moved efficiently, kept his head down. Nathaniel hadn't seen him before. Later, during the lunch break, Nathaniel found Morgan sitting on the trailer steps with a clipboard and a half-eaten protein bar. "Who's the new guy?" he asked. "Carlos. He's from the Hillside location. They loaned him to us for 2 weeks. Does he know that? Or is this one of Calvin's surprises?" Morgan gave a half laugh. "He was told yesterday. Didn't complain. Just showed up and started working." Nathaniel nodded. "How's your knee holding?" She shifted slightly. "Hurts like hell after 3 hours. But I'm managing. I've got to follow up with the ortho next week. If they say brace and rest, I'll listen." "You won't lose hours for medical leave," Nathaniel said. "We're rewriting that policy, starting this week." She didn't say thank you. Just nodded once, then looked past him toward the ridge course. "Can I ask something?" "Sure. Are you planning to replace Calvin?" Nathaniel didn't respond at first. He watched 2 kids walk toward the hydration station, arguing about whose turn it was to lead. "I haven't decided, but I've seen enough to know he's not managing the field the way we need." "Then let me say something as someone who's been on the ground every day," Morgan said. "He's not broken rules in obvious ways. He just doesn't care. If it looks good on paper, he signs off. Doesn't matter who's limping or who's burning out. I don't think he even knows who I am." Nathaniel met her eyes. "I do." That afternoon, the corporate team arrived in matching polos. Middle managers from a tech firm, judging by their lanyards and shoes that weren't meant for dirt. They laughed loudly and took selfies in front of the course sign. Nathaniel kept to the bridge, but he heard the tone shift as the group moved through the zones. Jokes got sharper. One woman with short gray hair was singled out repeatedly by her teammates. "Come on, Janet, don't freeze up now. Janet's going to file an HR complaint against the ropes. Need a minute to breathe, Janet, or just slow by nature?" Nathaniel stepped off the platform and walked toward Morgan, who was resetting the belay lines. "You hearing that?" he asked quietly. She gave a tight nod. "Already told their team lead to dial it back. He said they're just blowing off steam." "Where's Carlos?" "Over by the incline scramble." Nathaniel headed that way. Carlos was kneeling beside a participant who'd slipped on the gravel path. The man had scraped his palm and looked irritated but not seriously hurt. Carlos was calm, focused, using the med kit properly. "You handled it well," Nathaniel said once the participant walked off. Carlos stood up. "Thanks. We had a lot of minor injuries at Hillside. You get good at reading them. You planning to stay there long term?" Carlos shrugged. "Don't know yet. I like the work. Just not the politics." Nathaniel nodded. "If something feels off or unsafe, I want you to say something. Doesn't matter who's in charge." Carlos looked at him for a beat. "That's supposed to be standard? Because it's never been like that before." "It is now." Near the end of the day, the corporate group gathered at the debrief circle. Janet, the woman they teased earlier, stood off to the side. Nathaniel approached her. "You all right?" She looked at him, cautious. "You part of the team?" "Staff. I run the bridge course." She gave a small nod. "Corporate retreats aren't my thing. I'm the only one over 50 in the department. They think I'm fragile." "You didn't look fragile out there." "I'm not. But they don't see that." He paused. "You want me to report what I heard?" She shook her head. "Won't change anything. But thanks for asking." Nathaniel watched as the rest of the group posed for a final picture, already laughing again. That evening, after the last group left and the gear was stored, Nathaniel met with Morgan and Carlos in the trailer. "Tomorrow, I want to do something different," he said. "No bookings before 10. Instead, we run a full-team scenario drill. Emergency response, role switches, equipment checks. I want to know where the cracks are." Carlos raised an eyebrow. "You think we've got time for that?" "We don't. Which is why we have to make time." Morgan looked at him. "You're not doing this as a show, are you?" "No. I need to know who's capable of more. Because in 2 weeks, we're restructuring this entire region and I'm not promoting anyone I haven't seen under pressure." She nodded once. "Then I'm in." Carlos looked between them. "Guess I am too." As they left the trailer, the sun dipped low behind the trees. Nathaniel paused near the start of the zip line and looked out across the course. For the first time in a long while, it felt like something was being built again, not just maintained. Not everything was fixed yet, but the foundation was shifting, and he was finally standing on it with both feet. The drill started just after sunrise. Mist hovered low over the field, and the silence felt heavier than usual. No kids, no clients, just the core team gathering around the central canopy as Morgan handed out laminated roll cards. Nathaniel stood to the side, arms crossed, watching as Carlos read his assignment. He was tasked with leading a simulated evacuation from the elevated ridge course in an intentionally difficult scenario. 2 other staffers had to play injured participants mid-course, and Morgan would rotate between oversight and communications relay. Nathaniel had made it clear during the prep meeting, this wasn't about checking boxes. It was about pressure, timing, clarity, and seeing who stepped up when things weren't clean or simple. By the time the drill began, everyone was in place. Carlos took control of the situation with quiet precision. He radioed calmly, rerouted staff to guide the injured participants down, and double-checked every anchor point himself. When the mock evac was complete, he radioed the ground team not with a triumphant tone, but with a simple, clear, "Everyone accounted for." Morgan noted the time. Nathaniel nodded once. 7 minutes under the benchmark. Carlos walked over, brushing dirt off his gloves. "It could have been tighter on the second descent." "I hesitated on the line tension." "You noticed it without being told," Nathaniel said. "That's what matters." The next drill involved a lost child scenario, something that had actually happened at a different location the previous year. Morgan coordinated the search zones, and the rest of the staff moved with urgency but no panic. Nathaniel watched as the new trainee, a wiry young woman named Elise, stayed back to manage the entry logs. She caught an inconsistency in the group sign in 2 adults listed, but only 1 had been seen on the field. After the exercise, Nathaniel pulled her aside. "You recognized the gap in the forms. That's not part of your assigned role. I figured if a kid's missing, the adult count might matter." "It does. Keep thinking like that." She didn't smile, just gave a short nod and went back to coiling ropes. By noon, the drills were done. The team regrouped in the shade for a brief debrief. Nathaniel looked at the faces around him, tired but focused, alert in a way that told him they'd stopped waiting for someone else to take ownership. "You're not a full team yet," he said, "but you're becoming one." Morgan leaned forward. "We need time to build consistency. And we need to stop trying to run a 3-person rotation with 6-person expectations." "You'll get more staff," Nathaniel said, "but that won't fix culture. That's on all of you. If someone cuts a corner, you speak. If someone's not fit for this work, you don't carry them, you report them." Carlos set his water down. "What about accountability up the ladder?" Nathaniel met his eyes. Already in motion. He had scheduled a meeting with Calvin for later that afternoon off-site, at a neutral location. He didn't want to make a spectacle of it. Just a clean, direct conversation with no room for confusion. When Calvin arrived at the rented office space, he looked confident. Polished shirt, tablet under one arm. He sat across from Nathaniel without waiting to be invited. "Didn't expect to be pulled away for something like this," he said. "Oak Ridge numbers are actually up this quarter." Nathaniel didn't respond to the bait. "You've been running that region for 3 years." "Correct. Brought the average completion rate up by 17%. "At what cost?" Calvin leaned back slightly. "If this is about Darren, I already heard." It's unfortunate, but he did move numbers. Darren endangered a student with a known medical condition. He mocked participants publicly. He ignored staff injuries. And you protected him because his reports looked good. Calvin's jaw tightened. You can't expect me to micromanage every site. I expect you to know when a culture is rotting under your watch. There was a beat of silence. Nathaniel continued. You signed off on denying PTO to injured staff. You ignored staffing requests. And you're not even familiar with the names of half your trainers. Calvin set the tablet down. So what do you want? A suspension? Retraining? No, Nathaniel said. I'm ending your contract. Calvin blinked. You're serious. I'm not going to rebuild this company from the inside out and leave the same people protecting the wrong things. I don't care how clean your spreadsheets are if they're built on negligence. Calvin stood slowly. There was no argument left, just a flicker of resentment under the surface. You're going to have a hard time replacing me. I already have someone better, Nathaniel said. He returned to Oak Ridge later that evening with a printed copy of the new staffing plan. He found Morgan near the gear trailer, checking inventory against a clipboard. He handed her the folder. Carlos is officially transferring here full-time. Elise will move into a logistics support role. You'll have 2 new hires by end of next week, both already background checked and trained out of the Central program. She flipped through the pages, scanning. This is real. It's signed and budgeted. Also, I need you to take 3 days off starting next month. Paid. No debate. She looked up. You're serious? I don't run this place anymore. You do. But you're not going to run it into the ground through exhaustion. That ends here. She didn't say anything for a moment, then nodded once and tucked the folder under her arm. Carlos approached from the ridge, wiping dirt from his palms. Got a minute? Nathaniel gestured him over. I've got a proposal, Carlos said. We've got a few staff here who are solid, but they've never done real emergency drills before this morning. I'd like to run one every other week. Keep it fresh. Rotate who leads. Nathaniel looked at Morgan. She nodded. Write it up, he said. You'll have whatever support you need. As the sun dropped behind the trees, Nathaniel walked the perimeter of the course one last time. The air smelled of pine and dust. The ropes swayed lightly in the breeze, and the platform stood clean and silent, waiting for the next group of kids who would step onto them not knowing what to expect. He stopped briefly at the blind bridge. It had always been his favorite because it wasn't about strength or speed. It was about trust, listening, letting someone else be your guide. He reached out and ran a hand along the guide rope, then turned back toward the trailer, where the lights glowed faintly through the trees. For the first time in years, the place felt honest again. Not perfect, not smooth, but honest.